When my cousin Ashley invited me to her company's networking dinner, I already knew it wasn't really about networking. It was more about parading her new job title and watching the rest of us pretend to be impressed. She worked in some mid-tier marketing firm downtown, the kind where everyone wears blazers that look expensive but are secretly polyester. You know the type, people who take themselves way too seriously because they just discovered Canva Pro and think that makes them creative directors. I hadn't seen Ashley in months. She and I had never been close, but we shared enough family BBQs and group chats to remain on each other's radar. The invite came with a perfectly passive-aggressive note: thought you might enjoy the crowd. Maybe you'll find a client or two for whatever it is you do. Whatever it is I do. I'm a consultant. A real one. The kind companies fly across the globe to sit in conference rooms and panic about how to fix their operations, their brand, their bottom line. But I've learned to keep that vague. Because the word consultant makes insecure people itchy. And Ashley? She's basically a walking rash. The event was held in one of those rooftop venues with string lights, exposed brick, and signature cocktails named things like Synergy on the Rocks. I wore a sleek black dress, simple but expensive. Understated confidence is a language most people don't speak. But I do. As soon as I arrived, Ashley spotted me. She had that look, tight smile, scanning eyes. "Peggy," she said with a dramatic air kiss, "you made it. This is such a corporate scene. Hope you don't feel out of place." I almost laughed. Out of place? I've sat next to Fortune 500 CEOs while they cried into their whiskey. This was kindergarten. Still, I smiled. "Thanks for the invite. Looks fun." She led me into the main area and began introducing me to her colleagues. Most of them were early 30-somethings in ankle pants and practiced smirks. When Ashley mentioned I was a consultant, the reaction was immediate. "Oh, like, life coach?" one asked, barely disguising her snort. No, said another, a guy with aggressively gelled hair. "She's probably one of those freelancers who make inspirational Instagram posts. Right?" I said nothing. Just raised an eyebrow. Ashley added helpfully, "Peggy's kinda between things right now. She travels a lot. I think she gives advice." The group laughed. Not in a cruel way. Just dismissive. The kind of laugh people use when they feel safe. When they don't think you're a threat. I let them. Because the best revenge is patience. Over the next hour, I let them talk. And they loved to talk. About KPIs they didn't understand, about hustle culture, about how Ashley was totally being groomed for management. Every now and then, someone would ask me a question like, "So, what exactly do you consult on?" with a tone that practically dripped sarcasm. I kept my answers vague. Operations. Scaling. Efficiency. They nodded like they understood, then went right back to their own echo chamber. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so painfully predictable. But then came the shift. The CEO arrived. His name was Martin Russo. Tall, silver hair, sharp suit. He had that tired but rich look of a man who owns too many homes and not enough time. The group suddenly straightened up. Voices softened. Jokes disappeared. Ashley lit up like a Christmas tree. "Martin," she beamed, "this is my cousin Peggy. She's a consultant." Martin gave me a once-over. Not sleazy. Calculating. Like he was assessing an asset. "A consultant," he repeated. "In what sector?" I met his gaze. Finally. A real conversation. "Business architecture," I said. "Process design. Venture integration. Lately, I've been doing private equity advisory. Mostly for companies trying to scale without imploding." There was a pause. Martin nodded slowly. "Interesting. What firm are you with?" "I'm independent," I said. "By choice." That got his attention. And that's when the others started shifting uncomfortably. Like suddenly realizing they might have made a mistake. Ashley's expression tightened. Martin asked for my card. I handed it to him. No company name. Just my name and a private number. He smiled. We should talk. I'm bringing in outside minds for a potential acquisition. Maybe you can sit in. Ashley's face cracked. The people who had spent the last hour laughing now looked like they'd bitten into a lemon. I didn't gloat. That would have been too easy. Instead, I nodded and said, happy to help however I can. From that moment on, the vibe shifted. Dramatically. People who hadn't looked my way all evening were suddenly asking where I lived, what I drove, who my clients were. I gave short answers. Let them squirm in the silence. Eventually, Martin excused himself, but not before saying, I'll have my assistant reach out Monday. Glad you came, Peggy. The second he was gone, Ashley grabbed my arm. Why didn't you say you were working with people like Martin Russo? I tilted my head. You didn't ask. She blinked. But, why keep it vague? I shrugged. It's usually safer. People can get weird when a woman's too successful. She didn't laugh this time. By the end of the night, her coworkers were practically tripping over themselves trying to impress me. Gel hair guy even asked if I ever hired entry-level analysts. I smiled and said, only if they're really good with silence and coffee. That shut him up. As I left the party, I stepped into my black car, the kind that doesn't scream luxury but whispers it with Italian leather and German engineering. I caught Ashley watching from the balcony. She looked confused. Maybe even betrayed. And I get it. People like her need to believe they've won. That their curated little office lives and buzzwords put them at the top of the food chain. But me? I build the food chains. And sometimes, I feed the sharks. Monday morning arrived with the same smug predictability as a LinkedIn post about Monday motivation. But this Monday? This one hit differently. I was halfway through my second espresso when Martin Russo's assistant called. Not emailed. Called. People like that don't waste time. She was crisp, polite, and to the point. Martin would like to schedule a strategy session with you. Tomorrow at 10. In our executive conference suite. I could hear the unspoken part, no one gets invited there unless they matter. I said, I'll be there, and hung up. And then I smiled. Because I already knew who else would be there. Ashley. She had no idea what she had invited into her carefully curated corporate ecosystem. I was no longer just the cousin with a vague job. Now I was walking into her office not as a guest, but as a potential investor. Delicious. When I arrived the next morning, the receptionist looked confused. I told her my name. Her eyes widened slightly, and she offered me a glass of sparkling water before escorting me to the top floor. The executive floor. It was all glass, steel, and too many plants nobody watered. I walked into the conference room and saw them, Martin at the head of the table, a few other partners, and, oh yes, Ashley, seated halfway down the right side. She looked up and froze. Her smile twitched like a bad muscle spasm. Peggy, Martin said, rising from his seat, glad you could make it. He gestured to the seat at his left. His left. Not only had I been invited, I was sitting in the spot reserved for equals. Partners. Decision makers. Ashley's eyes didn't leave me. She was trying to do math in her head. Trying to figure out how the girl she mocked 2 nights ago was now sitting next to her boss with a Mont Blanc pen and a leather-bound notebook. Martin launched right in. We're considering acquiring a competitor, he said. They've been bleeding cash for 2 quarters, but their client list is solid. I want your take. I glanced through the packet his assistant had emailed me. I had already done the deep dive. Their target company was a disaster operationally, but its digital assets and client relationships were gold, if you knew how to restructure them. I broke it down, you're looking at a fixer-upper with good bones. The brand has value. Their delivery model doesn't. You'll need to gut it, retain 2 key teams, fire the COO, and merge their CRM with yours. Silence. One of the junior partners scribbled notes like a desperate college intern. Martin grinned. Exactly what I thought. Ashley spoke up. Her voice had a tremor she tried to mask. Wait, are we seriously considering her input on this? Martin turned to her, blinking. Of course. Peggy's done turnarounds 10 times this size. And just like that, the air changed. Ashley's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her coworkers avoided her gaze. One of the partners leaned forward and asked me a question about integration timelines. And for the next 40 minutes, I held court. I led the conversation. I redirected weak strategies. I corrected numbers. And I watched as the people who laughed at me just days before scribbled down every word I said. When the meeting wrapped, Martin walked me out personally. We're also looking for silent investors on this acquisition, he said. You interested? I pretended to consider it. Possibly. Send me the deck. He smiled. You'll have it by end of day. As I walked out of the building, Ashley came rushing up behind me. Peggy. I stopped. Turned. Waited. She hesitated. I didn't know you did all this. I tilted my head. You never asked. Her voice dropped. I mean, honestly, why didn't you just say something sooner? Because if I had, I said, you wouldn't have believed me. She flinched. And, I added, sometimes, it's more fun to let people reveal who they really are before you do the same. Her mouth opened, then shut. She had nothing. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I got the investor deck. And something else. A copy of their internal talent assessments. I read Ashley's file. It was brutal. Mediocre performance. Inflated self-presentation. A note from HR questioning whether she could scale with the company. And a final note, possible redundancy if investor funding leads to restructure. Now, I normally wouldn't interfere. But this wasn't about business anymore. This was personal. The next morning, I called Martin. I'll invest, I said. With a few conditions. He chuckled. I'm listening. I want one seat on the transition committee. And I want discretion over personnel evaluations during the merger. He paused. Anyone in particular? Let's just say, I replied, I prefer teams with emotional intelligence. And humility. There was a silence. A chuckle. Understood. When we hung up, I leaned back in my chair. Ashley thought she was hosting a dinner. But she'd actually sent me a gift-wrapped opportunity. She wanted to impress her coworkers by mocking me. Instead, she introduced them to their new silent partner. And she didn't even know yet that I was the one reviewing her employment file. 3 weeks later, the acquisition went public. Their company, Vireo Collective, was acquiring a boutique firm for a cool $7 million. To most employees, it looked like a bold move. But to me, it was a business play with a twist, one that came with full investor privileges and one very sharp scalpel. I walked back into that office like a storm in heels. Quiet, composed, and entirely in control. I wasn't there as Peggy, Ashley's vague consultant cousin. I was there as the investor representative overseeing transition strategy. Which, in corporate terms, is the person who decides who stays, and who goes. The first thing I did was schedule a series of one-on-one interviews with department heads and key employees. It was standard practice, I needed to understand where the rot was. And on the second day, Ashley was on my list. She didn't knock when she entered the glass meeting room. She just walked in like she always did, with the confidence of someone who thought the floor would never drop beneath her. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat down. Her posture was stiff. Her smile was fake. And she was sweating through her cream blazer. I opened a file with her name on it. Ashley Monroe. Creative Strategy Lead. Reports suggest a disconnect between title and performance. She blinked. Excuse me? I read your evaluations, I said flatly. Your leadership rating is below internal benchmarks. Your team turnover is the highest in the division. Your campaigns underperform. You've missed 2 innovation deadlines and failed to meet the client brief on the last 3 major pitches. She swallowed hard. I leaned forward. But you do have one skill I admire. She looked up, eyes hopeful. Really? You know how to perform for the room. You're good at sounding competent. For a while, that worked. I let the silence stretch. Unfortunately, I added, you've just walked into a room where performance doesn't matter, outcomes do. Ashley shifted. Are you firing me? I'm giving you 2 options, I said. You can take a redundancy package and leave with some dignity. Or we can move forward with a performance review that may disqualify you from severance entirely. Her mouth fell open. Peggy. I'm your family. I smiled, cold and slow. Oh. Now I'm Peggy again? She flinched. You laughed at me in a room full of strangers, I said. You implied I was jobless. Worthless. A joke. Now you're asking for mercy because we share some DNA? She was silent. I continued. You didn't just mock me. You used me. For status. To look better. And when I didn't play along, you tore me down. Her voice dropped. That wasn't my intention. Intent doesn't pay salaries, I replied. And it doesn't keep underperforming employees. She was staring at the table now, humiliated and finally quiet. I slid the exit paperwork across to her. You have until Friday to decide. If I don't hear from HR by noon, I'll assume you've declined the package. Then I stood. Meeting over. She didn't move. I walked out. By the time Friday rolled around, her resignation email had circulated. It was drenched in over-polished language about pursuing new horizons and being grateful for opportunities. Everyone knew it was a forced exit. No one asked questions. Because they all saw what I did, an empire built on buzzwords and bluffing, finally crumbling under scrutiny. And as I walked through the office that afternoon, I noticed something beautiful. Silence. Respect. Even fear. The same people who had once giggled behind their wine glasses now stood when I entered the room. They asked my opinion. They took notes. They listened. Not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. Later that evening, I got a message. From Ashley. It was short. 1 sentence. You could have just ignored me that night. I didn't reply. Because she was right. I could have ignored her. But some lessons are better taught through experience. She wanted to mock the title, consultant. So I gave her a masterclass. And in the end, the woman she called basically unemployed became the one holding the keys to her career. Funny how that works. Weeks passed. The company stabilized. The acquisition went smoothly. And the bonus I earned from optimizing both companies? Let's just say I bought a small villa in Portugal. But more than the money, it was the transformation that satisfied me. They laughed. They assumed. They underestimated. And I watched every smug expression dissolve into panic the moment the truth hit them. I wasn't some random consultant. I was the one they'd all be reporting to, directly or indirectly. The one who sat at the table they thought they'd earned. The one with the power to restructure their entire narrative. Ashley thought she'd get a moment to shine. Instead, she gave me the perfect spotlight. And I used it to burn every fake title, every lazy assumption, every smug little smirk straight into ash. So next time someone tells you they're a consultant, don't laugh. Because you never know whose company they might own by Monday.